This podcast intro, songs AI. It's on YouTube and Spotify. You can use your ears or use your eyes. It's 30 minutes randomized.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of 30 Minutes Randomized. I am joined today with someone who I have gotten to know in the recent years and really love, Dan Schell, the editor-in-chief of Clinical Leader magazine. Dan, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. This is great. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I have already seen one animal walk by in the background. I'm hopeful to see at least that animal again and maybe more. If you can, just orient everyone who's listening to kind of who you are, where you're coming from, so that they have some context for the answers you give.
Yeah, I'm just the chief editor of a website called Clinical Leader, and we write about clinical operations. We've been around for a long time. I took over this position in 2023 after our longtime editor, Ed Mesita, passed away unexpectedly. So I am still what I call new to the clinical trial industry, even though I've been at the company for 26 years, covering the whole spectrum of drug development.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so I have that same outsider trying to become an insider background, so hopefully we'll get to talk about that.
Yeah.
But I do not pick, the wheel is going to pick, and we're going to spin for our first question. If you're new, I'm spinning a wheel. That's how I'm interviewing Dan. All right, life science to clinical. Oh, this is perfect. Sometimes fortune favors us. So you made this transition from kind of broader life sciences into clinical leader about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what types of things, what was surprising to you when you first made that transition? What was kind of making your eyebrows perk up?
Super easy answer. The acronyms. Holy shit. I mean, there were tons of acronyms, and again, I've been in this industry for a long time. I ran our Life Science Leader magazine, which covered clinical trials, but the amount of acronyms in this industry still today overwhelmed me. So that was my biggest surprise for sure. And then as I went on, I think the biggest surprise was the lack of progress that we're actually making in clinical trials. And apply that to clinical operations, apply that to diversity, apply that to patient recruitment, apply that to feasibility, whatever you want. I'm still amazed that even 3 years ago, we're still talking about the same things. And it doesn't seem
And probably
like
when you came into the industry, you're like, all right, State of the Union, and you found out that they were still talking about the same things they were talking about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's 3 years after that. Do you have, like, sometimes I'm going to double click on these and go a level deeper. Do you have any sort of meta hypothesis? I know you're an outsider, and so you probably don't feel comfortable saying, like, well, I've assessed it and I've figured it out. But from an outside perspective, is there anything that you're like, maybe this is why we're having trouble moving the ball down the field?
No, I don't. And I would give that normal answer that you just said, but I think that somebody just said this recently. Who was it? Was it Robert Goldman, maybe, on your first episode, who is super smart? I like talking to people like that. But they were talking about who are the they in making the decisions, or the decision to not change. And oftentimes it comes down from that regulatory effect, of getting an inspection and getting your hand slapped. And so then that just causes people to revert back to, this is how we've always done it. So I feel like there's a big element of that in this industry for sure, and I understand it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those things where, not to get too jargony, but there's multiple stakeholders in every decision, and they all have different levels of inertia causing them to want to not change for different reasons.
Yeah.
Like regulatory, not wanting to take a risk at work because you don't want to get fired, like no one gets fired for using IQVIA or whatever. Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, let's head back to the wheel and see what else we can do here. I'm very excited. Okay. All right. This is going to be a quick one. You just got back from a cruise vacation.
Yeah.
I want you to rank the following 4 vacations. 1, cruise vacation. 2, all-inclusive resort. 3, road trip. 4, 1 week in a new city. These are totally different types of vacations. I want you to just put them in a rank order.
Yeah, we're not big travel people, so this was the longest we've ever been away. It was a 7-day cruise. We went to Italy, Greece, and Turkey. First time ever on a cruise. First time my wife ever going overseas. I had just gone for a conference a few weeks before for my first time. So we have never spent a week somewhere. We have done the all-inclusive. I would say only because this is fresh in my mind, this was number one. We really liked experiencing the history and the culture of those three countries. And so that was great. And so I would say the cruise is going to be number one. I would probably put all-inclusive number two, the 1 week thing we've never done. And I don't even remember what number four
A road
was.
trip.
Road trip. Yeah, road trip. I would say the only road trip I ever did was with my son from Arkansas to Pennsylvania. And that was awesome because he looks like me and we get along great, you know. So
quality time with the kids, as long as you don't fight, is hard to beat. I think most people's cruise experience is probably not, their first one is probably not going to an amazing European cruise. It's like 3 days in the Caribbean. And it's basically you're on a floating Golden Corral buffet. And so I know a lot of people who would rank that fourth, but the European cruise sounds amazing. All right. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope it sounds like you had a great time. And I'm glad that you did.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
40th wedding anniversary.
Well, congratulations. All right. I know you're a live music guy, so I'm assuming that's what we're going to get here. But what was the last ticketed event you went to? The last thing where you had to pay for entry?
I believe it was, yeah, you're right. I'm a musician. I like concerts. I went to, have you ever heard of Leonid and Friends?
Leonid and Friends, I haven't.
They are a Russian tribute band. I should say they're a tribute band from Russia that primarily covers Chicago songs, but they also cover Earth, Wind and Fire and Steely Dan. They came to my hometown, Erie, Pennsylvania. Incredible. Look them up on Facebook, Leonid and Friends. I mean, they are dynamic, super fun, incredible musicians, Ukrainian and Russian sometimes together. It's really, really cool. So yeah.
That's great. I'll try and put a link in the show notes for those of you who are super interested. All right. We are flying through it here, and I am thankful for your presence, Dan. We have a couple special categories today, and I want us to hit one. Yes, we did it. All right. So Dan, because he's used to interviewing people instead of being interviewed, has brought his own wheel to the show. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. He's going to share his, and the interviewer is going to become the interviewee.
Now it's the Steve wheel. Here we go. Let's see. We are going to share this. And we're all seeing this Steve wheel here. And we're going to go. Spin it. Spin it.
It's actually nerve-wracking. Like,
how do you like it?
I didn't realize like how stressful it is.
All right. DIA's funniest story. If you just got back from DIA, don't tell me what impressed you the most. What was the funniest thing that you saw while at DIA?
Oh man. The funniest thing that I saw, we did not have a lot of zany times. And I'm not in the zaniest of moods right now. But I did go on one of those double-decker bus tours.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the hostess, her name was Ruth, and she was like just purebred Philadelphia, like from central casting, rolled off an assembly line, like her accent, her tone of voice, her mannerisms, like, and I don't really have a specific instance because it was mainly funny because of her character, but she was just hilarious. Like we were laughing the whole time. We were learning things about Philadelphia. I have so many Philly factoids. But I'm gonna just say Ruth the tour guide was absolutely the funniest thing about the trip for me. I wish I had more like hijinks that we got into, but there were not a lot of hijinks. I was also there solo, so it made it a little harder to have like a crew rolling around. Thank you for that. And I do recommend the double-decker tour of Philadelphia. If you,
and I would say also, I would recommend your walk and talk of the DIA recap. Fantastic. And so many people commented on that, and I watched it, and obviously I do those types of things. You're really good at those walk and talks, even in your neighborhood or wherever, and that's what I call them. Great assessment of the whole show. I loved it, because you were sort of an outsider for the first time. You weren't just on the exhibit floor. And so it was interesting hearing your perspective. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. We've got one more Dan wheel on
Oh,
here, and
okay.
I'm excited. I don't know if we'll get there. Well, all right.
This is
Okay, so this is long, whatever.
hot.
I'm just gonna remove it and ask you the questions. But
Yeah.
I know that clinical leader is like a business. You're kind of selling content sometimes. I've gotten reached out to by Liam, who is absolutely the goat of business development. That guy's great. But you also post a lot where you're like, oh, I was just curious. I heard this and I reached out and I interviewed these people. What's the common thread of the things that make your eyebrows shoot up where you're reaching out and you're saying, I want to cover this for clinical leader?
Yeah. So first of all, nothing I write is paid for. No one tells me what to write. That's a whole different side of the business. And when you talk about
Dan
looking,
Schell. Dan
he's on
Schell cannot be bought, ladies and
right,
gentlemen.
right. Yeah. And he's Liam is one of our BD folks. So when you talk about we have sponsored content, that is stuff that people pay for, but that's not what the editorial department does. We have a very strict church and state type of separation. And I've been the protector of that for many, many, many years at the company before I was in this role. But myself, just like any Life Science Connect, and that's the name of the company, editors, we have lots of them. We all have a strategy to what we write, and we call those causes and themes. And we reevaluate those causes and themes each year. And so for me, it's going to be things like patient recruitment, outsourcing. I'm just being very general. It might be diversity. It might be improving clinical trial operations, innovating in clinical trials. So there's 6 causes and themes that I have personally that I look to see, will this fit into any of those? And it might be any of those things that we talked about. But then there's also going to be outliers, stories that I just think are really interesting. A brand new young CRC who's new to the industry. I'd like to hear him or hers perspective on things. A brand new site has opened up in the middle of New York City, and I run into the PI who's running it. That's a good story for me, and so if I can guide those conversations to one of those causes and themes, being strategic, it's great. But otherwise, I think it's just interesting content for our clinical operations folks. I hope it is, our readers. So I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it totally does. And I found those kind of like Dan Schell productions to always be pretty interesting. I think you're great at teasing out like what maybe is the most impactful bits for clinical operations folks. I want to ask about one that you recently posted, and it was almost like you were predicting the future because you were like, "Hey, don't ignore this one. It's important. It's about pediatric clinical trials." And then I looked, and the engagement was like maybe the lowest I've ever seen on you. What cause or theme was that slotted under? And
None.
maybe
Yeah.
give a
Well,
shout out.
I shouldn't say no. So you're talking about the article I wrote about the Oliver Patch Project and Project Outrun. So Andrew and Brian, whom I met at Magi this year, and they gave a very, very compelling and emotional presentation about each one of their organizations, which are basically geared around pediatric trials. So when we talk about what first attracted me to that, Brian and Andy. I mean, they did. I mean, if you saw that presentation at Magi, and I'm an emotional guy, but there were a lot of people that were brought to tears, at that. And so I was like, I need to talk to these people. But then I thought, well, how does this fit in? Am I just writing an article that is going to be helping to promote their associations? That's fine. But what am I bringing to the clinical operations audience? And what I was trying to bring was pediatric trials are a thing of their own, kind of like cell and gene trials, and I hadn't written about that. And so I thought this is an opportunity for me to really dig into that and use these guys' voices as someone or people who have been through it, and to say, hey, listen, ClinOps folks, if you're planning a pediatric trial, there's a lot more that goes into it than an adult trial. And so that's what I was trying to do with that. But it's interesting you say, like, it has low engagement, at least in LinkedIn. That came out when I was on my cruise. and so I had written it ahead of time and I didn't have a lot of time to promote it. And frankly, I was hanging out on the cruise. And so I didn't do much work when I was on vacation, so I felt bad about that. So yes, go to Clinical Leader and read that article, please.
That's right. Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, I read it and I thought it was impactful and meaningful. I love what the Oliver Patch is doing, and the other organization was new to me, but yeah, very interesting stuff. All right, we're gonna keep our march through the wheel going. All right, I'm asking this to everyone just because I'm trying to get a sense. Not necessarily what clinical leader is asking you to do, unless like that's a big part of it, but like, are you using AI daily? Like, what are you opening up, and then what are you asking it to do?
Yeah. Remember, Clinical Leader is one of many websites in life sciences under the Life Science Connect umbrella. So I have lots of editor colleagues that we meet every week, and almost every week we're talking about some level of AI, right? And how are we using it? We shouldn't be using it to write our articles. We shouldn't be, and I'm not, I obviously use it to do some research. I may use it to give me an outline. I'll use it to give me some summary ideas for the web. I may use it for LinkedIn ideas, but I hate even saying human in the loop, but you really need that. I mean, we all need to do that, especially as writers. All of us are very cognizant of the fact that we don't want this to just take our jobs. So when you see me saying, I talked to Steve Wimmer, I met all of the guys from Oliver Patch or whatever, like, that's me injecting myself into the article so that, and AI didn't write this, it's a challenge now for us as writers to create things that people don't think are just AI related. And you and I have seen this in our industry. There are some that we know, you can tell, are just AI created, so being authentic, being compelling are really challenging. But your question was, how are we using it? So beyond that, obviously our company's using it in lots of different ways, and content is just a tiny part of what our company does. We have lots of developers and lots of back-end data folks that are using it. But from the editorial standpoint, yeah, I would say that that's how we're using it primarily, which is probably absolutely no surprise to anyone listening.
Yeah. Are you like day-to-day life? Like, are you having to make grocery lists or anything like that?
I'm not.
No? Okay.
No, I'm not. And, I know some of my colleagues are a little bit more advanced and they use it like when it first came out, that was years ago. But when AI first started, there were one of my colleagues, John Ancia, who's the chief editor for Clinical Tech Leader, and he and I have been friends since 7th grade. Just a side note, we were in each other's weddings. We sit 10 feet away from each other. We were both enamored with the early, like 3 years ago, AI. And so we were testing each one of them. And, he's a big baseball nut and he would test it as far as like, he has all sorts of crazy stories of how it hallucinated,
Yeah, sure.
In the early days. Nowadays, he doesn't say those types of things, It's gotten so much better. And John's really good at scrutinizing things, and so I kind of looked to him for guidance on, hey, which one are you using? Because each of us use about 6 different ones.
Okay. Wow.
And we may use them against each other or, just to make sure that we're getting the right information. Yeah.
Cool. All right. We soldier on.
Great.
I think I forgot to remove that. Yeah, I forgot to remove it. So we get 2 spins.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. This is a category called Unhinged Corporate Icebreaker. It's basically like an icebreaker question, but if someone was kind of losing their grip on reality, where would you relocate to following a minor scandal? So let's say like something you got to get out of town. Where are you headed?
Well, first of all, my dog Zeus has joined us. Zeus is famous. Can you see him? Say hi. That's a really good question. After having gone overseas, man, I was in love with Rome. I was in love with Italy. I like the laid back nature of everything there. I like the people there. So I'm cool with hightailing it over there and maybe hanging out with George Clooney or whoever else lives over there now, you know?
Got
So,
it.
yeah.
I'll tell George to give you a ring.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. We're rapidly exhausting. Oh,
Dan
yes. All
Wheel.
right, here we go.
All right. Let's
We
do
have
that.
another Dan wheel. So you can go ahead and share your screen, and
All right.
I'm going to answer a question. I feel like my last one was not great, so I'm hoping I can knock this one out of the park.
Let's see if we get a fun one.
I would love a fun one versus.
All right. Star
Oh,
Wars
no.
or Star Trek? Simple. And why?
Star Trek. Star Trek.
Okay. You're a Trekkie. All right. Have you been on any Star Trek cruises or?
No, I've never. I never grew up with either of those really. So,
Okay.
I watched the like reboot of the Star Trek movies with the guy who directed Lost, the like
Yeah.
Zachary Quinto ones.
Yeah.
And
Eamon
I
Lindoff.
thought they were really cool, but
Yeah.
I never like. Despite deep levels of nerdery, those two franchises never connected with me. I was I don't know.
All right.
I think you had to have your dad tell you it was really cool to get into Star Wars if you didn't watch it like on the first wave. And
Yeah.
my dad was not into it, so I just never got into it.
I have a friend, one of my musician friends is a giant Trekkie, and he just
Okay.
went on his third or fourth Star Trek cruise that had Captain Kirk had William Shatner on it. I mean, they have people from and he dresses up, and I saw pictures of it. I mean, people are into it. Yeah.
Fandom is an incredible thing. Like people get into something and it just brings them joy, and it's a vector for connecting with other people that you just don't get to share on your day-to-day
100%.
basis. And I really appreciate it. I don't think I have any fandoms that are like that deep. It might be Harry Potter. We are pretty religiously indoctrinating all our kids into Harry Potter. We start reading the books to them when they're 8. We take them to Universal, to Hogwarts when they turn
Yeah, I was just
11.
say you're close to that.
Yeah. But yeah, I've never been to any conventions. All right. We're heading back. These are both going to be more serious interview questions. I don't know. Serious is maybe the right word. Okay. So this is a conference question. I know you go to a lot of conferences. We met at Scope one year, and then really connected at another conference. I think it was Research Revolution. After going to so many, like, is there anything that stands out amongst the noise, or are they all just pretty much a blur of like free pens and squishy toys?
I am a big fan of the ING, the Innovation Network Gathering. I think it's a different type of conference, being so small and invite only. It's just unlike anything else. Have you been to one of those?
No, it's invite only. So are you shocked I haven't been?
I am. Yeah. Jeff Smith has done an incredible job there, and they've just expanded it, obviously, down in, I think, North Carolina. They just had one. But if you get any of you listening, get a chance to go to that, go to it. One of the things that makes it interesting is, first of all, it's in a theater. And so it's not like a whole bunch of different sessions. You just have like mini TED Talks all day. And those people that are doing those TED Talks have been training for months to do that without cue cards and without help and everything. So they're very well produced. But in between those, you take a break, and then most of the folks break out into what are called dive teams. And so you go to a separate building and you meet with your 6 or 7 people, and you've been assigned a task, a problem, an industry issue, and you're supposed to work on that for 8 hours. So over 2 days, you sit with that dive team and you work on that particular problem. And then you come back on the last day of the conference and you get up on stage with your team and you present, hey, here's what we think will help move the needle or make a change. And you could do that in the form of a skit or whatever. Like, you would fit in perfect for this, Steve, because being so creative. So it's different in that respect. Those TED Talks are different. There's no vendor promotion at all in this event. But it's all kind of geared towards everybody moving the needle. I hate keep using that term, but it's a magi thing. Towards improvements in our industries.
Yeah. Yeah. I have seen some of the talks
Yeah.
circulating on LinkedIn. I've seen, heard about the conference, heard about the dive teams, and I think it's like just so fantastic. But it is another universe from
It
like the
is.
standard like exhibit hall panels, whatever.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I think I'm always curious, like, okay, commercially, like, how are they sustaining it if there's no vendors? Because I know, like, a lot of these conferences, like, they're getting by because it costs $30,000 for 100 companies to show up, and
Sure.
whoops, all of a sudden you've made a lot of money. Um, Maybe I'll reach out to Jeff and beg him to invite me to the next one. All right, we have our last question here. The wheel is a spinning. All right. So you've been interviewing people, you've been learning about the industry specifically for 3 years. Is there a strong opinion you've developed, like something where you're kind of holding it like this because you believe it to be true? And bonus points if it's an opinion that not everyone would agree with.
Well, I'm not Paul Iveson, however you say it. He's really good at being the contrarian, and he's much smarter than I am. So I would say I don't have an opinion for the bonus points of something that's going to be contrary. I would say my opinion, I write a lot about diversity. It pisses me off, the industry, how poorly we've done. I do clinical leader lives, these webinars. I have one coming up on July 15th, and it's on, diversity again. And the key word there is again, like, why do we need to keep having this discussion? Well, we need to keep having this discussion because, the current administration removed a whole bunch of the diversity guidance and put up a stupid disclaimer about it and everything. And so it upsets me. And my opinion is we need to keep moving forward, way before or way beyond the marketing rhetoric that I think is out there. Like, we're diverse, we're patient centric. Like, the new thing is we're site centric. Which site centricity is totally different. I get it, but I think a few years ago everybody jumped on the diversity bandwagon, and now you can't even say the word diversity. You have to say some type of
Representation.
representation or something else. But we all know what it is, and it is including more people in trials that are not white dudes, white old dudes, and so I'm passionate about that. I'm not sure it's an opinion, but that's the best answer I can give you.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's such a complicated issue, and there's so many ways to tackle it. There's the access side, and then there's the scientific representation side.
Sure.
There's like if you could just like knock down every barrier to access, it probably wouldn't actually make that big of a change because there's still the trust barrier. So there's like all these hurdles that people have to jump. And I think one of the issues is that most of the solutions are touching one barrier and not the other like three. And they're not always being deployed at the same time because sometimes these solutions are competitive companies. So it's like, well, use us, we'll help you solve the diversity thing, but they actually need an unlock from one of the other companies. But now you're asking the sponsor to spend 10% of their budget on hopefully increasing the diversity. I do not envy anyone whose job it is to try and solve this. And I think the only way is like everyone who's doing their little bit kind of coming together and figuring out how to work as one.
So take that last part of your sentence and apply that to the whole industry, not just diversity, every single
Yeah.
thing. That's the problem, but that's not, but you said everything way better than I would. Yeah. And that's why
Oh,
you've
Daniel,
been in this
stop
industry,
it.
So you want
Well,
to do one more
listen,
wheel?
man. Yeah. All right. We can close it out with a Steve wheel. We have like a minute.
All right, here we go.
If it's a complicated one, I'm going to rush through the answer. Thanks for being a good sport and for bringing your own wheel. Insane.
I carry it with me everywhere.
No thanks for picking that picture though.
Oh, you know what? This was boring. Favorite conference? We're not going to do that.
All right, we'll skip it. Skip it.
All right, we're skipping that one.
I would even. I'm so diplomatic. I don't know if I would answer that. Anyways.
Favorite clinical leader, chief editor?
This is a perfect one. My favorite clinical leader, chief editor, is indeed Dan Schell of Erie, Pennsylvania. It's been good to get to know you this past year. I'm really appreciative of the way that you're approaching things. You're a super humble guy, even though you shouldn't necessarily be. So thanks so much for joining me on the pod today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Thanks for listening to 30 Minutes Randomized. If you enjoyed the show, please feel free to like, subscribe, review, or share it with a friend. Until next time, I'm your host, Steve Wimmer, reminding you to stay random.